Hello and greetings. Greetings to all. I am very fine. How are you? Isabel, good afternoon. How are you doing today? I'm glad that these videos are helping you. And the whole idea is to basically share the stories and cultivate peace in daily living, cultivate a compassionate heart because, we've had debates for centuries and nothing concrete came out of it other than confusion. So, developing a compassionate heart is important, which means looking inwards. Okay, let's see. So, can you talk about how you recognized your situation on dark night of the soul? Well, you see, we are made up of awareness. It is our nature. So, through every experience, there is a knowing, which is not separate from the knower. So, through the experience, I could see how the mind was jumping to conclusions. Now, when I say mind, I include everything in it, the emotional body, the sensations, the feelings, everything. And I could see how certain ideas were creating panic and, causing sorrow, disruption. One moment and other moment it was causing, other moment it was quiet and I could feel peace and happiness. Sometimes there would be, you know, feelings of ecstasy. I had a very mixed situation. So sometimes I would be feeling sexual, sometimes I would be feeling, sad, sometimes I would be feeling extremely happy. And yes, I tried to find psychological solutions to it, and I did get a lot of insight from psychology. But at some point, I had to question as to whom is this experience, what is the common factor of all these experiences. That's where the insight came, that there there is seeing, a seeing which is not personal in nature, which is happening here, which is totally impartial, totally non-judgmental to the content that is happening, and resting in that energy is peace. That is what, the masters call the presence. Hi Jay, can you talk about how your day-to-day life, can you talk about your day-to-day life? How do you spend your time? Okay. Well, my life is not very interesting. Uh, I I get up in the morning. I do my workout, which is usually high intensity, which I do 2 to 3 days a week. Then I sit in silence for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then the routine follows, which is not much. I mean, I've already made a video about it. If you want, you can check it out. It's a recent video where I actually explain most of my days actually spent doing nothing, just walking, and sometimes contemplation happens, so I let it happen. Sometimes uh, just relaxation and strolling and just being happens, so I let that happen too. Okay, Wisteria, greetings to all. Your voice is not as clear as your videos before. Yes, because probably I'm using a different mic today, so maybe that's why it's not there. I hope you guys can hear me. If it's let's hope if it's a little less loud, then I can maybe put it close. Maybe this will be better. I don't know. Let me know. Okay. Okay. I'm glad that this is better now. Okay. So you say, I wonder how you were able to achieve so much calmness. You see, I don't know if I'm all that calm, but uh, one thing that happens with the insight is the focus never goes outward. The attention, I would say, never goes outward. So I always revert back to the self, to the me, whenever anything arises. Uh, but overall, my nature is a little like that, where I talk a little slow, and from the very beginning, I probably have been like this. Can you talk about your relationship to the mountains? Yes. Well, you see, mountains, I rediscovered, I actually discovered for the first time that I had a relationship with the mountains. As a child, we used to go, my parents used to take me to the mountains to visit the popular hill stations. But, at that time, it was just a trip, and I would feel motion sickness. So I didn't really enjoy the experience. But as as I moved away from the city, from all the chaos, from all the noise, when I left the corporate world, this silence started pulling me. This serenity, the calmness started pulling me towards itself. So now I'm very lucky in that way, because right now where I am, which is Mohali, a small town in Punjab. Well, it's not a small town anymore. It's quite a hep place now. It's turning into a city. My bad luck, uh, but the mountains are quite close, in close proximity from this place. So mountains give me the opportunity to be in the wilderness, in the quietness, and to simply observe, sit still, and become one with the experience. Plus, also, people in the mountains are very humble. They're very down to earth. They're very simple. Most of the locals don't like noise, loud music, or chaos. They're very, very peaceful. They sleep by 8 p.m. in the evening and get up again at 4 a.m. So I love that. whole ecosystem, that lifestyle of getting up with the sunrise and sleeping with the sunset. So that brings me a lot of serenity and calm. Although I would say that uh, nowadays mountains are becoming crowded and noisy too, because a lot of city influence has come there. But again, still, there is a there is a charm to the mountains, for me at least. Okay, so Isabel says, please talk about when we see the illusion of life duties and tasks, and yet we need to carry on. The feeling of exhaustion, tiredness, boredom, to have deal with the to, to have deal with the futility feels feels like a waste. The feeling of exhaustion, tiredness, and boredom, to have deal with the futility feels like a waste. Yes. So usually what happens is, when we are doing our tasks, there is an undercurrent of uh, thinking which happens. Sometimes we are not aware of that, consciously at least not aware of that, but there is an undercurrent of restlessness while doing the things, especially the things that are repetitive, like cleaning and paying bills and all of those things. But yet they need to be done. So the whole idea is actually to find peace while doing all of that and actually enjoy um, simple things. For example, um I now enjoy cooking. So I'm not a great cook, but I try to make salads. So now it is some work, getting the ingredients and then chopping, cutting, and making the dressing. But if you do it slowly, if you do it consciously, or let me say, if you do it keeping the sight of presence, abiding in the presence, then none of that will ever feel like a chore. There will be no boredom. So boredom is basically mind saying, no, I'm used to something more exciting, like a smartphone, or, or or like a or any other gadget, or any other thing which makes us feel more thrill and excitement. But those are all just rising waves. So the natural state is the ocean, which is calmness. So one of the things I learned was to actually do things slowly, because when there is this feeling of boredom, one tends to speed up the process of the things, and there's a sense of anxiousness in the action as we are doing it. So if we can recognize in that moment that anxiousness is happening, we can simply step back into the awareness that is illuminating the anxiousness. Who is, by simply questioning, who is aware of the anxiousness, of this restlessness? Who is the one that knows? That inquiry always leads us back inwards. And in that moment, you start experiencing calm. And then you can slowly carry on your daily life, you know, uh, daily things, whatever we do. And yes, small things sometimes feel like waste because we have been fed very big ideas in our mind. We have been told that we must achieve this, achieve that, make the best of the human potential, and God knows what and all we have been fed by people, by society, by parents. Well, not to blame them, but they learned it and they passed it on. So we keep seeing people running towards things which they feel is are valuable at this time, like earning money, making this, making that. So they're actually all the time waiting for big events. So naturally, mind gets conditioned. It wants something big, something thrilling, something exciting. But then, small stuff starts looking boring. This one of the examples is like if you watch a horror movie, you know, your adrenaline. I can never pronounce the name of that. Okay, that a chemical uh, in your body, it gets activated. Adrenaline, yes, it gets activated. So if you have to watch an old black and white musical, you won't feel, you know, you will feel this is a waste of time, but actually it's not. So, yeah, that's it. Okay, credible Indian says you should go to Palampur near Dharamshala. Not many tourists like. Okay, I have been to Palampur. I have been to Dharamshala also. They are both beautiful places. Manali, I found a very good place in Manali actually. Uh, I don't know if I'm going to conduct a talk over there, but since it's close to the place where I live, I think it's just a good opportunity for me to take a break and, be in the mountains. And I know a couple over there who are very, uh, you know, who were very nice to me. So I would like to go again and meet them and see how they're doing. But yes, right now we decided to conduct a retreat in Mumbai, which is happening next month in November. It's approximately 1.5 hours from Mumbai, and the place I've been told is called Badlapur, which I mispronounce as Baldapur, but it's not Baldapur, it's Badlapur, and it's probably 1.5 hour distance from Mumbai. It's a quiet farmland, and the owners were gracious to allow us to talk over there. And I would be covering teachings from J. Krishnamurti also, because the J. Krishnamurti Foundation School is also nearby. So that is one place. If you live close by, or if you live locally, you can always come and be a part of that. Uh, you know, be a part of that. All right. Okay. Mysteria says, talk about detachment phase when the life is moving, but only you watch yourself still. Well, till you are watching yourself, the detachment will not happen. Detachment is it's a very natural process, and it happens through an understanding. And it is an impersonal process. If we try to train the mind to detach, we are getting attached to detachment. So there's nothing you can do other than to simply investigate, is the object that you're trying to detach from is separate from you. In most of the cases, you will find the answer that what you're trying to detach from is not separate from you. It's a part of the me system. All right, Alexander says, hello Jagjot, I came along your channel very recently and just wanted to say thank you. I had that insight 5 years ago. From personal consciousness, I expanded to the universal consciousness I feel. Thank you, you're most welcome. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. May I ask, Ramana Maharshi says, do you deny your being in deep sleep? So you must exist there also. My question is, this mere intellectual, or is there a knowing in deep dreamless sleep about my being? My question is this merely intellectual, or is there knowing in deep dreamless sleep about my being? Now you see, it is the intellect which is asking this question. So if I say that No, it is not intellectual. The intellect is not going to be convinced. But you examine this yourself. What really are you in deep sleep? Is there a really you in deep sleep? But something definitely is there, because the experience of deep sleep is known, and in that there is no awareness of any sensory input. There is no awareness of thoughts. So how does that experience come about? That is the question. So there must be something, some awareness, which is completely untouched and unconditioned. And that is what is called being. The realization is that being becomes evident even in the waking state, when one when there is this realization or recognition of wholeness, which is again unconditioned, and it can be tapped into even while one is doing daily activities. So that also answers the earlier question where there was talk about getting bored, or you know doing mundane tasks. That boredom happens because there is an undercurrent of restlessness, a thought system which is running subconsciously. But when being is recognized, being is one which lights up all the process. So when that recognition happens and one abides in that, even the daily chores or whatever one does happens on its own, while one remains aware of the being as the being. All right. Anju says, is hurriness also anxiousness or body conditioning? Yes. It is a sign of it is a sign of restlessness. Body is simply reacting to the psyche. So there is a deep conditioning of the psyche, the restlessness, which manifests as body showing anxiousness. Now, anxiousness, when it's in extreme form, can come across as shaky, or as fast speech, or as, it can show up as restlessness, agitation. So, yes, hurriness, impatience is a sign of anxiousness. Okay, Jason says, can you talk about consistency on the path of awakening? Well, which consistency are you talking about? The spiritual consistency? I need to know what consistency means for you. If you mean continuously being in one state, then no, that is not possible, even after awakening, because human organism is designed in such a way that it does not allow you to be very selective with emotions. All emotions are going to arise. So there will be sometimes consistency of certain emotions, and there will be inconsistencies also. But on the path of awakening, it is slowly understood that consistencies happen, inconsistencies happen, but there is no central agency that is experiencing anything. But consistency and inconsistency is the experiencing itself. That is the whole idea. So there is no one to be freed of, or to be fixed, to be made consistent. All right. Great to connect with you, because I am from IT also. Oh, I am no more in IT. I don't remember anything about IT now. In fact, used to work in Mohali for Infosys back in 2000. Oh, I see. Connecting with like-minded people is so important, and there is no one I know who is in the same situation. Well, I'm sure there are many here, but you know, some of them maybe lie low and don't, you know. don't mingle. Some can be introverted. That can happen. All right. Kamal says, can we say awakened beings are little better than non-awakened, at least in the presence of duality? No, there is no, this whole idea of betterment or awakened or non-awakened is of the separate self. In fact, there is no such thing as a personal awakening. Wait, please hold on. Yes. So there is no such idea as awakened or non-awakened. See, when I make my videos, I make one thing very clear. It is not the person which awakens. You know, awakening happens. Awakening is an insight which is tapped into, insight which comes from wholeness, which is wholeness. And it is in the dream of separation that the limited entity gets a glimpse of the wholeness of the universal entity, but they are not two, they are not two different things. So it is not that non awakened people are less than awakened beings. No, I would, in fact, rather than using the word awakened, let's use the word understanding. There are people with understanding. The only thing is that life becomes peaceful for people with understanding. How? Because they do not enjoy the thrill of life anymore. But those who we quote as unawakened, although it's a wrong notion, but we quote them as unawakened, they still live in the illusion that they are enjoying life because they cannot conceive of this neutral peace which is pure nothingness, which does not include anything. You know, it is it is not made up of parts. It is complete. It is whole. It does not have a beginning or an ending. It is something. It's like a flowing river which can be tapped into any time. You can just take a handful of water from this flowing stream and drink it anytime you want. But overall, life and its challenges and ups and downs are same for both people. It is only in the dream of duality that we make this distinction between awakened, unawakened. There is no such thing as awakened, unawakened. It's all wholeness, playing awakened, unawakened. Okay, JSL says consistency in inquiry and meditation. Okay, on the spiritual path, no, there is no necessary condition that consistency in inquiry and meditation happens. For some people, it happens. For other people, the situation may be flip flop. Sometimes they may go back to the material world thinking this is all useless. You know, it so happens when when we are in the thick of the material world and we have had this glimpse into the wholeness, there is a crack into the structure of the personality. Sometimes it seems as if the spiritual path is full of joy and bliss. Other time it feels it is all nonsense. So we tend to go back and forth. You know, sometimes we suspend inquiry. We go back into the material world, spend a couple of couple of more months or years there, then again come back. You know, after getting a little bit of more nudge from the from the material challenges, from the challenges of the material world. But uh, eventually, consistency in inquiry and meditation begins to happen as one goes along in this path. In fact, the whole process of observation becomes meditation, like a 24-hour meditation. Well, you know, I won't say 24-hour, but as long as you're waking, it's constant meditation because the constant observation is happening. Observation of what is happening, observation which includes inner outer, which includes the division that is caused between the inner outer. So there is this inquiry always going on? Is there this distinction between inner and outer, or is it just one whole seamless process? So when it becomes evident that it is one whole seamless process, life by nature, the observation, it starts happening spontaneously. One lives life as a witness. That is what Ramesh said. Okay. Susan says, I experienced consciousness 5 years ago where I didn't have to put effort to stay in present. This phase waned off. Now I need to use effort to stay present and be peaceful. Will it become effortless? See, yeah. So what happens is that you did not do anything to to have that experience. The experience happened, but it showed you something which now is probably the most valuable thing for you in the world. But the mind, it says, oh, I want it again, you know, I want to experience that again. So it starts putting effort. So you are going through a phase. This is also a phase where the seeker goes through, it has seen wholeness, it has seen the glimpse of the absolute. Or let me put another way, wholeness has been witnessed. Now the mind says, I want to experience the wholeness again. But what it does not know is that the mind itself is an obstruction between you and the wholeness. Once the mind, the layer of that mind drops, becomes quiet, you are the wholeness. So, effort is what is obstructing you from not experiencing it before, not experiencing it anymore. But again, it is also not in your control to drop this effort, you see. So if the effort is happening, let it happen for the time being. At some point, mind will grow tired and drop the effort. And then again, you will know. Okay, Praveen says, Namaste Jagjotji, dark night is going on for a long time more. Too much brain fog and severe lack of motivation. Yes, it can be tough, can be quite tough. Again, there is no shortcut or solution to cut this off other than to just know your nature as the wholeness. If we get this, then the dark night is over in an instant. If we don't get it, it can go on for years or decades also. But you see, even to have experienced that dark night, and I know it can be very painful, and it will probably sound a little insensitive for me to say that it is probably one of the best things that happens, because without that suffering there is no path, there is nothing. We remain unaware and we remain trapped. So even dark night of the soul is grace. The only thing is not to fight it. When we don't fight it, path becomes relatively simpler, relatively less painful. But yes, it can be very painful, and all these things are experienced: brain fog, depression, lack of motivation. All these things are a part of it. And mind is the one that gets troubled by all of this, because mind has been trained that you must be productive, that you shouldn't sit, that you shouldn't rest. You see? So mind says no, because your value has been assigned to your doing in this world. So when you don't do anything, you are deemed as less valuable. That is where the mind struggles. I'm unmotivated. I should be doing something. I'm not doing anything. I say, your body is resting, your mind is resting. What's the harm? Let it rest. Let it rest. Okay. Why am I getting panic attacks and anxiety attack after gaining spiritual knowledge? Well, because one of the reasons for this is because sometimes there are very hard counter beliefs. We have been told from the very beginning that we should be like this and we should be like that. And the moment the whole facade cracks, it can be quite painful. So sometimes it can actually manifest as anxiety attacks or panic attacks. I remember myself having a panic attack. I was walking on my terrace in my Delhi house, and I had an insight. And the insight was there's nothing, there's absolutely nothing. And in that moment, the mind immediately comes up. It comes up and it says, oh, if you are nothing, then who is this me? You are losing your identification. You're going to lose everything. Mind comes up with the fear, losing your identification. If I'm not this, this, that, what is my identity? Who am I? Because my usefulness again is in my being somebody, my being this or my being that. I should be a mother, I should be a daughter, sister, I should be, uh, I should be everything that society has told me, that people around me have told me I should be. But when I'm nothing, when I'm completely blank, it feels that I've lost control of life. And that is where the mind panics because it scares, it feels afraid of losing control, and the panic arises. But you see, this is the whole thing. Mind is all about control. The moment control is let go of, mind becomes quiet. And when mind becomes quiet, what remains is peace. Of course, let me make this clear that we are not talking about the thinking, working mind. We're talking about the fragmented mind that is always tied up with identifications and connected to outcomes. I am so and so, I must achieve this, I must achieve that. That is the mind I'm talking about. Not the one that does creative work or that is used to plan things. That is a working mind. So that's another thing entirely. All right. Is it true that one of the purposes of awakening is divine calling, simplified as helping or calling others to emergence either by words or through practicing silence? Well, I honestly don't know what is the purpose of divine calling, but I do know one thing, that this calling does happen. And eventually, every path is leading us to that place of unity. Even the material path, through by offering suffering, is actually leading us eventually to that wholeness. Because whether you are a spiritual seeker or not, at some point in your life, you have questioned about your purpose, you have questioned about life, you have questioned who you really are. But when you're immersed in the dream, you are given a vision. You're told that no, you are this person. You form an identification that I am this. But when you look deep, you understand that all of that is an acquisition. Your name, your identification, religion, caste, creed, gender. Okay, gender, again, gender is, it's not given by the society, gender is there, but the social rules that are given to you are based on that gender are given by the society. You must, because you belong to this gender, you must do this, you must not do that, all those things. So I would just say, what Ramana Maharishi said, that uh, the whole purpose of awakening is to just realize the eternal self. Okay, I'm going through a spiritual crisis, depression. I've tasted my higher self in pure sattva. But now in life challenges, I'm in rajas and fallen to tamas. I have lost interest in everything. I'm frustrated. Again, this is again the part of the same movement of the mind. Because Mind is telling you that you have that because of these states, falling into rajas or tamas, that mind is telling you this is undesirable. It is bringing attention to the self, to the small self, to the limited me, which says I must be like this, I must not be like that. I would say a very natural process is happening. There is impersonal energy flowing through you at this point of time. There's nothing that one needs to be scared of in this process. There should be no fear, actually. It's a beautiful process of cleansing, but you make it hard by overanalyzing, by working your mind continuously. Just stay present with your emotions. Just observe what is happening. If work happens, productivity happens, do it. If it doesn't happen, don't do it. If it doesn't happen for days, don't do it for days. In some cases, you won't be able to help it because some of you have to earn living and you have to do your jobs and work. So you will have to get up and do something in some cases. But for others, it is the mind which is making this this distinction. So if rajas is happening, then probably some rajas means activity, high activity out of anxiety. So that is happening because of it is happening as per the will of the impersonal energy. You have no role in that. If tamas is happening, that too. Now, in the moment, if you feel you must get up and do something, by all means try it. But know that sometimes you will succeed, sometimes you will not succeed, and both are fine. So don't fall into this trap of mind's evaluation of what is right, what should be, what should not be. That is the trap of mind. And again, as I've specified earlier, I'm talking about the thinking mind, the mind that is attached to identifications and outcomes. I'm not talking about the creative mind. Shrikant, Namaste. Could you describe how the awakening process unfolded for you? What was your practice and for how long? So, the thing is, I did not do any practice as such. It just happened. I can just describe one of my experiences. I don't put any special emphasis to that, although I've mentioned it in one of my articles, but I don't put very special emphasis on the experience because sometimes we get hooked onto experience. The moment I tell you my experience, you're going to think that you must experience something similar. You see, which is a trap again that the mind has laid. So for me, what happened was that I was just standing in my courtyard in my parents' house, and all of a sudden I looked at the sun and tears started rolling out. And before that, I was a hard guy. I was a guy who would not show emotions. I was a guy who was tough, you know, what do you call that? Alpha male sort of thing, something like that. But tears started rolling, and I felt love. I felt compassion. And in that experience, there was complete mergence, everything that was being witnessed. And there was no separate observer. So there was a wholeness. And there's I don't have any words to describe that experience, but that was the first time when I felt love, deep love. And what happened after that was very interesting. It opened up my emotional body. For the first time, I started feeling all emotions in full swing. One of the things one starts feeling after this process happening is feeling sexual. Oh boy, the urges, they drive you crazy. It happens. Especially if you have been someone who's been working very hard and ignoring that aspect of your life, there's going to be a blast and you start feeling sexual all of a sudden. You see each and every emotion in deep clarity. So, for the first time, I could see my own anxiety, my own sadness in full capacity, in total vision, which means there wasn't a sense of agency from which these things were arising. It was just the witnessing of arising of everything. And that is how there came this knowledge that it is all one seamless whole. There is no separation at all, which brought deep love. Now, it does not mean that my life became easy after that. I would still go through emotional roller coasters. I would still fall into the depressive episodes, but nothing lasted very long. It could be seen. Every movement of the mind could be seen. And there was a knowing that it's all empty. There's no concreteness to anything that this mind is producing, as in all of it is unreal, which means it is not as solid as it's appearing to be. So if an emotion arises in a given moment, let's say anger, it was seen that this anger is hollow. Yes, it is there on the surface. Yes, an expression is coming out of it, but it is hollow. So what happens with the recognition that this anger is hollow and it is made up of light? It is just made up of awareness. Awareness becomes the reality, and the anger, which is the expression of the same awareness, merges back into that awareness. I don't know if this makes sense, but nothing sticks for long. So the witnessing itself became a practice rather than I did not do. Uh, I did, in that phase of after this experience, I went through a phase where I would do long hours of meditation. But at some point, I just gave up all formal practices and simply started the observation. If you want to call it a practice, I don't know if it can be called a practice, but it just I didn't I didn't put much force into it. It just started happening on its own, and even now it just happens on its own. So, I get cut off from the intensity of things in the moment and simply rest in awareness. Sometimes I do get involved too, but I know that the involvement is happening. So there is a difference between getting involved and knowing that one is involved. Okay, my family also suffers because I am in the dark night of the soul. Everyone accuses me of making my old parents suffer. What should I do? Well, it is difficult for me to tell you what to do. I would only say just investigate. Go within yourself. If people are suffering because they are worried about your conditioning, as such that you're not physically or emotionally trying to harm them, but you're simply suffering and they're suffering because of your suffering, there's nothing much you can do to eliminate that, because sometimes we are in this bond with other people, and it so happens that when we suffer, other people who are connected to us, they suffer too. But if we know our true nature, the suffering comes to an end. Pain never ends. Life and pain never ends, but suffering ends. What sometimes parents don't understand is that when they suffer because their child is suffering, they're actually multiplying the suffering. They're not helping. Ideally, a parent has to be a stable ground for the child. But then, this is life. There are forces acting on the individuals which are beyond our understanding and control. So we cannot tell anybody how they should be or should not be. Just like you have no control over this process, even your parents have no control over this process. So might as well accept the situation for what it is. That does bring relief. Wish you all the best. I know it's a difficult situation, but when you realize that you are the eternal self, you are Satchitananda, the suffering will finish. Pain will always be there, but the second arrow, as the Buddha mentioned, will be gone. Okay, good evening, Lynn. Praveen says how to be totally non-conflicting, like JK says, J. Krishnamurti says. Well, do the investigation. You must investigate, which means do not jump to abrupt conclusions. Investigate what is this process of centeredness? What is your relationship to the world? What is your relationship with your thoughts? How is this whole dynamic playing out? Observe that. In that observation itself, the conflict will be dissolved. If we form hard conclusions, we jump to hard conclusions early on, then the conflict stays. Okay, Anju says when the dark night of the soul starts, when the dark night of the soul starts and when it ends, or is it continuing? The dark night of the soul starts when there is a crack in the structure of the personality, when there is an awakening, when there is a glimpse of the wholeness. That is when the dark night starts. Because your whole personality, your structure has been cracked by this awareness. The facade that you had built, or let me say that had been built for you, which came about, is now destroyed, is now cracked. And that is why it's painful. So sometimes life seems blissful, joyful, ecstatic. Other times it feels low, dull, depressive. And we keep fluctuating between these two states. And I always suggest that, if in that period anything that you feel is going to help you, like talking to somebody, taking therapy, by all means do it. Don't discard anything by calling it spiritual. And if an external help in that case is needed, if a specialized help is needed, by all means do that. But let the investigation also go on the side as to who is the experiencer, who is experiencing all these things. So to answer your question, dark night of the soul starts when it is destined by the awareness, and it ends when it is determined by the awareness. What starts the journey, also the one that, what starts the seeking also is also the one that ends it. Shivani, I'm in the post-dark night of the soul stage. That's a void, nothing is happening, stuck there. So if you are stuck there, you're still in the dark night of the soul. Because when the dark night ends, there is no sense of personal or separative agency which is stuck, or which is there to see what is happening. It's simply the happening. It is just a final, probably the last stage of the dark night of the soul that you're going through. The feeling of stuckness is um, it can be quite debilitating. So yeah. All right, I'm just going to take two more questions and then we'll conclude. Um, how should one find direction in the heart and mind to find self security after being abandoned by your own parent? Did introspection, did introspection and went through pain, grief, but forgiving myself and everyone. So the idea here is that the fundamental of the teachings, which I'm going to go into details in my Mumbai talk, is on the idea of is on the concept of non-doership. Now, right now we don't have the time to go into it. There are a couple of videos that I've made on it. If you want, you can refer to them. Uh, but the whole idea that we are the doers of our action keeps us trapped in this endless cycle of guilt and shame, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships. Because, yes, it can happen that one may be abandoned by their parents, and that wound is very potent. I understand that can be very traumatic, can be very debilitating. But at some point, one has to accept that that is what the situation is. It is our inability to accept it, because the little child in us, that little child is also an illusion. It's not the real thing, but it presents, as an aspect of the personality, says that I must get love from my parents. But when we don't get that love, it craves. It goes into either it goes into anger, which are the ego states, or it goes into grief. Grief is healing. But the deepest level of healing comes from the understanding that you are pure love. Even if you did not get your parents' love, none of our parents were perfect. Even those who had parents never, even those whose parents didn't abandon them did not have perfect life. Even our parents they're not perfect. They did the best to their capacity, whatever they could do. But the whole idea is it's not actually they who did anything. There were forces acting on them which produced certain outcomes. And so are such forces acting on you too to produce your outcomes which are destined for you. So the only possibility for peace is not to go outwards, not to examine why the parents were hurtful, why did they do that. Now, if it arises naturally, it is all fine to experience that. But eventually, one must go inwards and ask this basic fundamental question: who I am? Who am I really? Am I this limited mind body organism, or is there something more? That is the fundamental inquiry which will relieve you from the pain. Wish you all the best. All right, last question. And I apologize for not answering more questions, but you see, it's already an hour and I need to go myself. So, okay. Jagjot, one question, please. Did you plan anything after the awakening, or have you been just flowing with the flow? Why don't plan any single thing? Well, you see, if my working mind comes up with ideas, there I plan. For example, travel, or if I want to conduct a retreat, I conceptualize that. But other than that, trying to be blissful, trying to be better, those things are not there within me anymore. Trying to improve myself in some way, trying to find something, there is just no element of seeking left in me. There is no question about life's purpose. So I'm totally free from all of those things. Rest, I just live like you. I have daily challenges like you. Sometimes I get upset also like you. But you see, I'm not analyzing myself. This is the way this organism is. That is what it is. And this organism is peaceful, very peaceful, the way it is. So I'm going to go into these aspects in my Mumbai retreat, which is happening on the 27th of November. From 27th to 30th, I'll be there in Badlapur region, which is 1.5 hour, uh, 1.5 hour distance from Mumbai. So those of you who wish to join, uh, the link is in the description box, and you if you feel like joining, you can come and be a part of that. So I take your leave. Thank you all for your love and support, and I wish you peace. Take care.